Welcome back to The Mature Male. I'm your host, Wes, a practicing psychotherapist with a focus on helping people find meaning and direction, heal from trauma, and mature through practical guidance and wisdom. Many men find themselves with plenty of social connections, but few genuinely deep friendships. They have buddies to watch the game with or discuss politics, but when life gets really challenging, they have nowhere to turn for meaningful support or understanding. This depth deficit in male friendships doesn't just affect emotional well-being, it impacts physical health, mental resilience, and even longevity. Today, we're exploring how to transform surface-level male friendships into genuinely supportive connections that go beyond activities and opinions to create the kind of depth that sustains us through life's inevitable challenges. Let's get into it. The approach we're taking today is a gradual depth building versus a forced intimacy. We'll first explore the psychology behind male friendship patterns, examine the barriers that often prevent greater depth, and offer practical approaches for cultivating more meaningful connections with men. What if the depth missing in many male friendships isn't about personality types or inherent limitations, but about specific skills and practices that can be developed with intention? Segment 1, the male friendship paradox: structure creates depth. Structure and shared activities, often viewed as merely surface connection, can actually create the foundation for deeper intimacy when approached intentionally. There's a common phrase used about social bonding and gender differences that men connect side by side and women face to face. When there is an ability to connect side by side, there's a disarming dynamic that allows men to get comfortable through the activities they're participating in before opening up. Men, just like every human, need safety and security before opening up. This is often why demanding men open up face to face doesn't go so well, whether it's in therapy, in relationships, or in general as a societal demand. This relationship between perceived safety and friendship depth shows us that the ability for a man to participate in an activity with another man gives them a perceived sense of safety, which then allows them to feel more comfortable in opening up and therefore share things and also create a space to listen to what is shared by another man in a way that creates that depth that we're all looking for. Predictable context and clear expectations create the conditions for greater openness. We feel more safe when we can predict what's going to happen. If there is a sudden change in a ask or request or an outcome, then we are a lot less likely to open up. This is why doing the same thing over and over again builds the trust among men. Watching the game, therefore, moves from being seen as a shallow activity to a ritualistic bonding that happens by sitting together over and over. The same as with going out for beers or going on a hike. Repeating that activity builds the predictability and therefore makes a man more likely to open up. There can be a temptation to implement generic rules within a friendship that looks something like, hey, if we're going to hang out, we should open up, or we should not just watch the game and talk about X, Y, and Z the whole time. That is a good principle, but it is bad because it is not clear enough. Men also do well with clear, direct, and formulaic style principles. So you change that into something that says, hey, let's watch the game for 30 minutes and then let's catch up on what's going on in our life. You can feel hesitant in suggesting something like that, but ultimately it is a respectable approach because you are asserting a new standard and you're not just passively engaging with friendships, which is what most guys do. Let's talk about some common misconceptions about male friendship. Meaningful male connection doesn't require traditionally feminine communication styles or constant emotional disclosure to be genuine and supportive. Many issues with the way that people who are not men try to get men to open up is by doing it a woman's way. Well, if he would just share his feelings, if he would just express what's going on, if he would just open up and get more real, then I would trust him more. It would be healthier. The issue is that a man's mind doesn't work the same as a woman. And so his interpretation and definition of vulnerability is expressed differently. Instead of having them sit down, have this one-on-one pressure to open up, again, having an activity or an exercise or a formula sets the groundwork to help them start to feel safe and secure enough to then open up. You can still be genuine and supportive without directly sharing your emotion and exactly how that emotion is impacting you. There's a diversity of different connection styles that go well beyond the stereotypes. The main two stereotypes we have are men are emotionally unavailable. They just prioritize work, sports, and sex, and women are always emotionally available and prioritize connection and friendship. Men have a variety of different expressions of how they can open up, and it's somewhere in between those two. But to try to overhaul a man's identity and force him to open up in a particular manner will not work. What you want to do is use the activity, use the social bonding rituals to establish that rapport and that connection. Oftentimes, humor can work here as well. To then start with a general question. So, what's going on in your life? Many times it will start with information and move into experience. And this is the difference between men and women. A woman can right away share about what's happening from an experiential level, but men often need to share facts and information, reason and ration about what has happened. And then it's getting them to say, okay, but what was that experience like having a hard day at work? What was that experience like when your parent did this or that? What feelings may come up in you? That all that ask for being vulnerable is built on the informational gateway that happens at the beginning. Friendship debt isn't primarily about time spent together or even the longevity of the relationship, but it's about specific qualities of engagement and mutual knowing. Many times we can confuse knowing someone a long time for knowing them well. And those two things are not necessarily correlated. You can have a history of shared experiences, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're close. Now, this sounds a little paradoxical to what I mentioned at first, which is you need the rituals of repeated activities, time spent together to build that rapport. That is true, but it doesn't mean that the simple act of repeating those activities together and sharing those times together means that you are close. Also, the amount of time you spend together. If you spend 4 hours every Friday watching a sports game for a year, you are starting to build some rapport, but it doesn't mean that you now have a deep or connected friendship. So you want to distinguish those two and realize there are certain qualities about how people can connect: their openness, their willingness to change, their curiosity, their support and active listening, their reflection on what you have shared, that contribute as qualities to the depth of knowing someone else. It's learning to refine your skills of going deep that helps you do that, which we'll get into. So let's talk about some real life applications here in segment 2. I want to talk about a personal story of how a surface level male friendship was transformed into deeper, more meaningful connection. So when I was in high school, I had really good buddies. We played sports together. We would go on hikes together. We would hang out, do all kinds of mischievous things together, as many high school boys do. And I felt connected to them because I had a good time. We had shared interests and we joked around, and it was enjoyable. We went on a ton of adventures together. But it wasn't until I got to college that I realized there was this depth missing in my friendships. Guys that shared about what was going on in their lives. And I have my own struggles that I was looking to share with others that I didn't feel I had at the time. I could share with my girlfriend, but I couldn't share with my guy friends and get real about what I was struggling with, what I was trying to make sense of, and what I was desiring to know. When I went to college, I met a group of guys that for the first time started asking how I was doing. And that caught me off guard because I didn't know what to say. No one had asked me that. I just thought things were good. Some things weren't so good, but that's okay. It's just how things are. And it wasn't until it was normalized for me to be around guys who were asking not just how I was doing on an informational level, but getting again to that deeper experiential level to be like, no, man, but like, what's going on? How are you doing? What are some good things going on? What are some things you may be struggling with? It wasn't until I built that safety and trust with them that I started to open up. When I did, I realized I had a fear of rejection. I had that in previous relationships, asking people out, and I had a fear of abandonment because of the trauma of losing my father at a young age. I was scared that if I was close to a friend, they would just up and leave. And so I was challenged with a lot of wounds from my past that I had to face. And I had to take a risk and answer this question. Do I trust these guys? That can feel weird to question, but it is the crux of whether or not you have connected friendships or not. I got to the point where I decided to take a risk and they came through. They're still some of my closest friends today. Shout out to my Kennesaw Owls crew down there in Georgia. They were supportive. They challenged me when I was dealing with some real issues. They were there to say, hey, this is not cool. We want to call you out, but we also want to walk through the healing with you and be here and support you while you grow and move on from these mindsets and these issues that you have. From there, that set the standard of how I saw guy friends. And still to this day, I can say in good conscience that every single one of my guy friends, I know what's going on in their lives. They know what's going on in mine. And it's not this emotional spill over on each other where we just share random emotions we're experiencing. It feels like a deep, intentional level of sharing that is thoughtful, that I can talk about things I'm struggling with in my own life, in my marriage, in my work, being a father. These are all things that I can bring to them. And I know that, first of all, they'll listen to me and just hear me out. They'll hold space. They won't judge me. They won't try to give me an answer of what to do, but they will reflect things back. They will encourage me. They will challenge me. They will ask me questions. And that has changed the way I see friendships. So let's talk about some common barriers to friendship depth. So the first one is competitiveness and comparison. We don't realize as men how subtle dominance dynamics and status concerns create these protective barriers against vulnerability and genuineness. We are constantly trying to one up each other subtly by comparing our jobs, by comparing how much weight we can lift or how healthy we are, by status of our relationship and how attractive the person we are is, how much we know. We want to constantly compare. I'm here, you're there, I'm in, you're out. We have this thought that if we share what's really going on in our lives, which mostly consist of issues that we struggle with, then we will appear weak, we will appear less than, and we will see ourselves as being under or subservient to our friends because we're admitting this is where we're at. When in reality, every man is there. We're all in the trenches. We're all dealing with the same type of things and we're all struggling. We all need support. Yet we live with this false belief that we are in competition with each other. And we compare each other to say, well, I'm struggling with this. At least that's not as bad as him. Or mine is worse, so why would I share that? That doesn't make sense. Instead of attempting to understand each other, we attempt to separate each other by those two dynamics. And that happens in male groups, often through joking. We can use humor to put each other down instead of bond and get closer. It becomes making fun of what someone's wearing or the way that they talk or a mistake that they made recently. Instead of us feeling safe and secure to be able to bond and share real issues, we become hesitant and we try to avoid being the butt of the joke. We try to avoid being not just made fun of, but rejected by other guys who appear more powerful, secure, and certain of themselves. So we use these subtle, subconscious movements to make sure we're not stepping on toes, we're not getting too close, and we're not too trusting. We're always walking around our friendships instead of walking into our friendships, because we are scared that if we go in, we are going to be threatened. We are going to be susceptible to some sort of pain, and we will not be accepted within this core connection that we all desire. The next two things that are barriers to men connecting are topic limitation and emotional containment. This way of restricted conversation domains, which includes sports, politics, and work, and emotional expression, create comfort but limit depth potential. How many times is the conversation dominated by this sports player or that sports game, this political view or this political issue, or work? This is what I did today. This is about my boss. This is how my week is going through the lens of work. It is comfortable to stay in those lanes because we are used to talking about them. We are normalized that is how we connect. Because if we share something real that's going on, well, I don't want to burden someone. I don't want to be a buzzkill. I don't want to make it weird or awkward. These are all insecure questionings that we have, and it prevents us from actually sharing because we feel limited to only talking about these things. But it's so constraining because deep down, we all crave connection. We all want to talk about the things we're going through, better and for worse. There's so many good things that we want to be able to share with our guy friends, but we feel, I don't want to come across braggy or prideful or better than. So why would I share that stuff? Because I'll just get made fun of or shot down as egotistical. And as far as emotional expression, we're not just limited to those conversations. We're limited to the emotions we can express with other men. We can joke and experience some sort of joy, but if we were to be sad and depressed, if we were to be anxious, if we were to be even happy, these are all things we don't allow ourselves to be, yet we experience them. Every single man experiences these emotions, and they need a place to go. They need to be able to be shared with others. We need to be able to hear that from others to know what's going on in someone else's lives. You do not know someone if you just talk about those three limiting topics, because you're just talking about someone else, a coach or a player or a game, something else that is not you two. It is used as a diversion, and you start focusing on talking about those things instead of each other, what's going on in this conversation, because we feel this pressure. If it's one-on-one, oh, I gotta open up. What am I gonna say? How am I gonna say it? Are they gonna want to hear it? What if I mess up or they perceive it this certain way? And we're dealing with all these fears, but the only way to grow in connection is to try. But there is this dynamic between safety and growth in friendships. So while we do need to feel safe at the beginning to build the rapport, we reach this point where if we idolize safety and comfort, then we become stagnant. And the only way we're going to grow in friendships, just like the only way we grow in anything, is our ability to take risks, to do adventurous things, to truly go out beyond our comfort zone and to challenge ourselves. How many times do men talk about rising to the occasion and being challenged and bringing out the best in us, being disciplined? That applies to connection with other men emotionally. Those things are often more challenging to us than some physical activity or a knowledge-based test that we take or want to share about a topic that we know about. The true challenge is facing the thing you least want to face. And deep down, you have to be honest about how resistant you are within your friendships and find a way to take the risk out of already feeling safe and to make the connection. Let's talk about the psychology of male connection patterns. We talked at the beginning about activity-based bonding. These side-by-side experiences create connection through different pathways rather than face-to-face. The strengths to this is that it works. We know that when guys do things together, they have a better chance at opening up. But again, the limitation here is that if the activity in and of itself is the connection instead of the gateway to connection, you can get caught up in doing things together, but not connecting as you do those things together. So what you want to do is try to create a pivot point within the activity that allows you to connect and focus on what's really going on. That can be as simple as just asking questions, or instead of responding to another sports stat or another person that's not there in the gathering that you're a part of, just say, hey, what's going on with you guys? You can even start super broad, but that pivot point is necessary. Men often show vulnerability as well as support indirectly. Men often express care and openness indirectly through practical help, humor, or specific context rather than explicit disclosure. These patterns can either facilitate or obstruct deeper connection. Some examples here is that a man may offer to help another man move, or to carry this for them, or to offer to do this request. Also with humor, joking with someone, if it's not demeaning, if it's playful, something like joking about the color of someone's shirt, or being lighthearted, joking about the way someone is always late. Those are little windows to someone knowing about you, your characteristics, who you are. And the humor reflects or sheds a light on a connection that you have, because we joke most with people we feel most comfortable with and who we know the best. It can be a strong bonding to be able to healthily joke. Again, it can take a wrong turn and be seen as a demeaning, separating gesture, which you don't want, where the joke becomes belittling or critiquing someone. But also, I think about my own life, how many times I've shared moments of joking with friends where I just feel so seen by them in how they're joking. Maybe it's particular context. You might share particular interests with a guy, or you've shared specific memories like going on a road trip together, meeting in college orientation, or being on a sports team. And those memories and those contexts in which you connect with somebody can be the way that someone gets real and vulnerable, because you have that specific bond and connection that you might not have with other people. And it's important to name that men are opening up, that they are getting real in their own ways through this indirect vulnerability and support. You just have to find out and take a peek beneath the hood to see that. All right, let's move into segment 3, where we talk about practical tools and applications. So we're going to start with the friendship depth development framework. So this framework consists of different steps. The first one is you're going to take a friendship inventory assessment. This is a structured approach for honestly evaluating your current male friendships and their depth potentials. You're going to list out all of your buddies, all your guy friends, and you want to include questions for identifying both current reality and growth opportunities. So you're going to start with the current connections you have with each of them. You may want to rank them from shallow to medium to deep. You may say Mike, shallow, Evan, deep. And you just go through each of your friendships, and you want to categorize what stage they may appear at as far as how close you are, how deep you are to them. Then you want to include a set of questions that look like this. How have I gotten close to them in the past? What can I do now to get closer to them? And what are the current barriers to getting close to them? So the first one with Mike, you may say, how have I gotten close to him in the past? By playing intramural sports with him. What are ways I can deepen my friendship with him now? It would be to start hanging out outside of the game before or after some intentional time. And then third, some barriers to getting close to Mike at this point is that he is a big jokester and he always loves to talk about this sports team and can never seem to get on another topic. And when I try to change the subject, he goes right back to it. So you want a list of questions to identify the current realities, what's holding you back, and how you may be able to grow in your friendships. The next part of the framework is the graduated depth progression. So you want to systemically develop greater connection through calibrated steps rather than sudden forced intimacy. You don't want to go to all your friends and have this weird, awkward, forced, like, hey man, we need to talk about our friendships and we need to share our emotions and we need to stop being closed off. You don't want this weird, forced announcement that makes everyone want to never talk to you again. What you want is some sort of natural depth development that is appropriate to your male friendship patterns. So you're going to look at that first part in the assessment. You're going to see where each stage of that friendship is at, and you're going strategically and subtly shift the conversation more and more to real things. I can give you an example. I have some guys that consist of medium to deep friendships on the scale, and there's 3 of them. So I have 2 medium, 1 deep, and we're all joking around. We're talking about different things. And I just posed a more reflective question. I said, hey, I know this is a little different of a topic shift, but I'm just curious. And then I asked the question and they joked, they go, oh, here's Wes, wanting to get deep and reflective again. But I didn't back down. I laughed at the joke. Of course, it's funny and I'm going along with it and it's true. But I just said, yeah, all right, well, let's hear it. And I maintained my stance and confidence that that's what I wanted to talk about. I was calm about it. I didn't try to make a big deal, but I also didn't back down and shy away. Oh, okay, yeah, no worries. We don't have to talk about that with this insecure, frenetic type feeling. I was able to just simply position the question, see how they responded, and see if they continued to go down this path. And they did. They were able to share a little bit. Was it as much as I'd like? No, but it never is, because I'm that guy that will talk about deep things for hours. But it was exactly what the conversation needed to be. It was just enough depth. It was just enough reflection and connection where we changed topic conversations in a way that felt more subtle. What wouldn't have worked if I was to say, hey, we need to stop talking about this. We need to get real. I'm tired of you guys avoiding shit and never opening up. But it also wasn't this passive thing where I let that conversation stay that way, didn't say a word, and at the end of the night got frustrated or annoyed that we didn't shift that conversation. So you want to ask yourself, what are some gradual ways that I can start shifting the conversation? It starts by asking a really broad question. Hey, how are you guys doing? And you might only get a good, and that might be it for that hangout. Next, you're going to ask someone in particular, hey, Brian, what's going on with you, man? Or you're going to ask a specific question. How's everyone's relationships going? I'd be curious to hear. Then if it's awkward, there might be a moment of silence. Guys kind of look around, not knowing what to do. Go ahead and set the tone. Be like, hey, you know what? If it's helpful, I don't mind sharing first. And you set the example and go ahead and share. You're going to start with broad questions, then more specific to a person or about a topic. And then if someone doesn't respond or open up, you share. Now, what happens if you feel denied or rejected? Someone says, okay, Wes, forget you, man. We don't want to talk about that shit, or that's not a big deal, or hey, man, that's weird. You want to stand your ground and say, hey, I hear you. It's not normal for us to talk about it, because you want to affirm and validate that it is a little weird. It is awkward. It's different than what you're used to. But explain the value of doing it. I've just found that talking about this stuff is real and that a lot of us are struggling with things. I think it's important that we talk about it. So you're being calm, you're being reasonable, but you're being direct in explaining why it may be important to talk about something. The next practice is called the context creation technique. So you want to create specific methods for establishing environments and activities that naturally facilitate deeper exchange, rather than trying to force it within unsuitable context. These approaches will be based on different friendship types and personalities. A good example is if you're at a small, crowded, loud bar on a Friday night, that is not the place to ask how people's relationships are going. Instead, think about something like a morning coffee, a walk, or a hike. Creating those intentional spaces where, again, you're doing an activity, but you are able to facilitate the dialogue that may feel more effective in that context. Also, don't do it with women around. That is not good. Men need to feel most safe when they are with other guys, where it feels like people can understand them and they're not at risk of either their partner or spouse or wife or another woman being in the room in that context, trying to get them to open up. Make sure it's all men. Make sure it's an activity, but it's a situation that allows for sharing. But also, don't do it in a library where it's super quiet and it's very still. And you want to strike that balance between not being too chaotic, but not being too quiet and intense. This also may depend on the personality of a friend. Some guys are going to be more physical activity based. They're good at lifting weights together, going on a hike, while other guys may be more intellectual or reason based. So grab a coffee, grab a beer, talk about philosophy, start talking about different topics that predicate towards the personality and the interest of the type of friendship that you have and the type of person that that guy is. Then you want to see it as an invitation rather than a demand. Again, you want to create openings for greater depth through appropriate questions and disclosures that offer but don't require reciprocation. You want to give the opportunity for another guy to share, to reflect back, to go with you down that conversation lane, but you don't want to force it. You don't want yes or no questions. You don't want to pressure them to match you or to share. It's this kind of calm, cool, and collected, hey, this is what's going on with me. Curious what's going on with you. You want to gauge the readiness and you want to respect people's boundaries. In short, resistance is code for I'm not ready. Doesn't mean that's right. Maybe they need to be ready, but nonetheless, it doesn't mean that they are ready. So you have to accept where a guy is in your friendship. Again, using that assessment, knowing the barriers and the readiness to change and work with what you got. There's always an opportunity to grow. And the only way that's possible is meeting someone where they're at. Let's talk about some common friendship scenarios. So the first is a transition from a group to an individual friendship. So some techniques for developing deeper one-on-one connection with specific men from within group contexts where interaction may be more surface level. The way that you handle this shift is that, let's say you know someone from a intramural softball team, all guys. You start talking to him and you realize that he's also interested in religion or philosophy, or he's also dating someone in a similar context. So the first step is not making it weird by asking him to hang out one-on-one. So you're going to catch him in that group setting, and before the end of the group hangout, you're going to want to grab a few moments with them and say, like, hey man, I've enjoyed our conversations in this group. I'm curious if you'd be down to grab a drink sometime or go on a hike or something. Again, you want it to be low stakes. You don't want to ask them for a 5-hour hangout. You don't want this intense one-on-one session that can feel pressured. You want to make it a casual invitation to hang out, and you want to justify it with naming the already established connection that you've had in the group. Then from there, you set a day and time, you hang out. You don't try to immediately keep hanging out with them one-on-one. You want to give it time, but you want to affirm after you text them, hey man, I had a great time. I appreciate you taking the time. Would love to do it again soon. Then you want to gauge their readiness. From there, if they respond generically or delayed, they may not be interested, and that's okay. But if they go, yeah, me too, I'm looking forward to the next hangout, that's a sign, okay, maybe in a month, I text them again and we hang out. You just start building a gradual rapport, interest, and involvement with that guy. You can borrow the commonality you found in the group with a one-on-one. You make it normal. Of course, if we have things in common, if we have a good conversation in the group, why would I not predict and think we would have a good conversation one-on-one? But you don't leave it there. You don't leave it in the group. You don't leave it with the conversation one-on-one about your group interest. That is the gateway to that deeper conversation for other topics that are more individual based. Then you want to look at a long-term friendship renewal. These are approaches for introducing greater depth into already established friendships that have settled into superficial patterns over time. This is about the nature and depth of the connection with that one-on-one friendship. So this is how you shift the momentum without creating awkwardness. You've been hanging out with someone for years, and let's say for the last 6 months, it's felt plateaued. You haven't really connected with them on a deeper level. You reach out to them next time you hang out with them one-on-one. You don't want to show any signs before this, and you're going to say, hey man, we've known each other for a lot of years. I feel like I know a lot about you, but I also think that we've plateaued a bit. You're just calling out your sense of where the friendship is at. And you say, it happens, but I'm wondering if you'd be down to getting a little more real during our talks so we can know what's going on in each other's lives so that we can support each other more. And I don't know about you, but I've had some things come up that feel difficult, and I would appreciate your friendship and support. And because I trust you, man, you are a great guy and someone that I really look to for that connection and support if you're down. You want to use this more casual approach language that's not pressuring, that's not demanding, that's not criticizing for not being that. It's a direct ask, which is more vulnerable. Hey, I'm looking for your support. It's affirming the value that that guy has in your life by saying what he's already been to you, which gives him more of a confidence and normalcy to accept your request. And that shifts the momentum and doesn't create an awkwardness. You also can set the stage here and say, I'm happy to share what's going on in my life, but then affirming, I want to know what's going on with you, man. I appreciate hearing about work and us talking and chopping it up about the game, but like, how's your relationship? How's this or that? How's your family? Starting to just give free questions and prompts that he may think about that you express interest in sharing. It helps formulate it so there's not this pressure from his end to say, well, what do I talk about and how do I talk about it? And I don't know, we haven't done this before, so it feels weird. You want to subtly shift it through those techniques. The conclusions and takeaways: remember, developing deeper male friendships isn't about forcing unnatural interaction styles or immediate vulnerability, but creating the conditions where greater connections can develop organically over time. This week, I want you to identify one friendship with depth potential, see where they're currently at, the barriers to getting closer, but also how you may be able to grow closer to them, and implement at least one practice or framework that we discuss to create context for a more meaningful connection. Until next time, remember that the effort to develop deeper male friendships isn't just about enriching your social life. It's about creating the support system that research consistently shows is essential for both health and happiness throughout life. Many men have on average 0 to 1 close friends. Don't be that guy that dies alone or is only close to his girlfriend, wife, or spouse. Be that man that has male friendships, but doesn't just have them objectively, has them experientially in a way that is close and supported and connected. Get real with other guys. Find your friendships, go deep with them, and live the life within your community of men that you were always meant to live. Until next time, guys.